one of the teachers of Congregation Beit Kakma Ubina, located um, in Brooklyn, New York, in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11203. Today, I haven't done this in a while with my brother, but let me just adjust this microphone over here a little bit better. First, let me start off by saying this. This morning I woke up, and like every other morning, you meditate, go to work. As I'm driving to work at about 5:30 this morning, I see a notification on my phone that says Brother Dwight versus Zion Lexx on Sarnetta University. So to me, I'm like, I know Zion hasn't been in good stead with Sarnetta lately. So maybe this is something old that I don't remember. This is a old thing that I don't remember. Let me first start off by giving glory to the Most High God, the King of the universe, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our creator, our maker, the one and only King. So getting back to the story. So I see this notification and I'm like, all right, let's see when this was done, this live. And surprisingly, it was done yesterday. So I'm like, okay, something that I didn't speak to Zion about. So I didn't know he got back on Sarnetta's platform or whatever. So whatever, but I press on the actual link, get on it, and I see a brother by the name of Dwight, and Zion is about ready to have a debate, and I'm like, wow. Unbeknownst to me, I'm like, he usually calls me and be like, "Hey, Chief, tune in." But it is, Zion is Zion, so he gets on this it's him, Sarnetta, and this brother Dwight, and Sarnetta is, breaking down the rules of the debate. Actually, like staying very neutral, which is something very, for the first time that I could say that Sarnetta stayed very neutral with certain things, especially when it has to do with Kemet and Israel, going back and forth. But he was very neutral, given time limitations. Had the big iPad with the stopwatch clock counting down and telling you got 1 minute, 2 minutes, like a real moderator, and hearing the actual debate and what was going on, I heard the brother speak about the word ships and what it meant and what it didn't mean. So he went into the and I'm going to let my brother Zion get into it and explain it in detail and in depth. But we got to basically the premise of Brother Dwight's conversation was, and for what I can remember, is that basically Deuteronomy 28 verse 68 is not talking about us going into captivity by the way of ships or on ships. You know what I'm saying? Like going back into Egypt, on ships into bondage, and basically just trying to discredit the transatlantic slave trade and what our forefathers endured through it. And that when we read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, we always put, as Israelites, we always use that as our, how would you say, our notifier to show that the children of Israel are the people that were sold into bondage into the four corners of the earth, the so-called Negro, the Caribbean, and us who are in South America, Central America, the Caribbean islands, et cetera, et cetera. So he just was trying to disprove that by trying to use one word, which is the Hebrew word for ships, in the actual Hebrew scriptures. and he was just, we're going to get into it. My brother's going to get into it. He was saying that the word doesn't mean ships, it means sorrows, and therefore, the debate went back and forth. But I must say this. I must say in the debate, when I saw the debate and I saw the going back and forth, when I first read the comments, I was like, from the comments, I thought, man, Zion must have wet the bed or something. He messed up. And once I got into, all I needed to get into was about an hour and maybe 20 minutes of the debate to understand the gist of what was going on. And once I heard my brother break down the word and give the understanding of it and show and cross-reference it, then I understood, all right, this is just when my brother gets on these channels, my brother Chief Uzziel gets on these channels, he just doesn't get any love, right? Regardless of what happens. So if he begins to get, as they say, turn up, which these platforms, right? This is what a debate was about. It was a lot of scholarship and some showmanship. So the turn up was for the showmanship, almost like a rapper's bravado, because this wasn't especially the House of Consciousness, debates in the House of Consciousness always had a tinge of performance. Am I correct, my brother?
That's a fact.
They always, from when you walked in, I mean, you come from a standard of debating from a college standard where that wasn't permitted. Right. But since we are a people with spirit or whatever, it was allowed in our forum. So all of a sudden people started getting mad. Zion is yelling, he's screaming. But I didn't look at it as that. I looked at it as it was the norm for that platform. This is what it was, the turn up. You know what I mean? Yep. I mean, I don't want to offend him, but Professor Small got turned up on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's a fact. So everybody gets the turn up. And if you don't come correct, and if you come weak, anybody could turn up on you. Shaka Atmos, you know what I mean? All the people that were on that channel had the turn up button, right? Yep. So besides the scholarship, there was always the turn up. So in reading the comments, it just seemed like, man, that my brother wet the bed. But looking at the actual, like about an hour and 20 minutes of this debate, I understood exactly what was going on and who was in control. So needless to say, I called my brother several times this morning. I didn't get him. He must have still been sleeping because I was calling him very early. I thought he had one of those, waking up early mornings, which he usually has, and he gives me a call. But he didn't, and he called me back later, and we talked about this, and this is how this conversation came about. So, my brother, how are you? My brother, Chief Uzziel Ben Levy, a.k.a. Zion Lexx.
I'm doing well, Chief. I'm doing well, man. I'm feeling good. I've been under the weather today. Okay. I had a sore throat all yesterday. And right. Sometimes with a sore throat, I might wake up the next day with a mild fever. So I have a mild fever right now with a sore throat, which actually went to me not even doing the class that I normally do on Tuesday night, making this, a better option per se. Having said that, man, I'm feeling great. I'm in good spirit, and I'm just enjoying life, man.
I hear you. So prior to this debate, did you have any idea what was going? All right, prior to the debate, did you know anything about this particular brother? Who obviously, how did the debate come about?
First, so Sonata reached out to me behind the scenes early last week to tell me that he had a brother that came on his platform, and the brother mentioned my name several times, and would I like to defend my name and respond to the brother? So I told him that I had already actually seen the video because people had already told me, and I told him that I definitely would do that. So that's what we wind up doing. We organized the time. We got Dwight on the phone. what was interesting about getting Dwight on the phone, the first thing that I said to Dwight is, the reason why I'd like to respond to you is because you went on Sonata's platform and said that I don't know Hebrew. And he said, to my surprise, nah, Zion, I would never say that, man. And Sonata could vouch for it. I even mentioned this last night. He said, I would never say that. I know who you are. I'm not going to say you don't know Hebrew. He says, I don't think you as proficient as you say you are. And I got some issues with, your interpretation. So, let's get it in. I said, all right, let's get it in. And I told him, could we do it tonight? And he was like, nah, we're going to do it the 16th or the 18th. And I said, Sonata, you see where we're going already? I said, He called my name in the video several times, said, I don't know Hebrew. I'm basically lying when it comes to the language and getting by. And when I call him out on it to say, hey, let's meet face to face, let's actually debate on it, now it's the excuse. We're going to wait to the 16th or the 18th to give him time to prepare.
Right.
Even though in the video that he originally did, he continued to say that I'm a nobody, I'm irrelevant. He doesn't even know why people listen to me. But then when I get on the phone, he now says, I need time to prepare for you.
Right.
So you already know how I am, man.
Yeah.
I let him have it for that. I let him know that, he was fake. You shouldn't be calling out somebody's name if you don't really mean the accusation. And, one thing about me, Chief, I'm a straight shooter. And what I like to tell people is sparring with someone is different from shadow boxing. Everybody looks like they could box when they shadow boxing.
Right.
Getting in the ring with somebody is an altogether different skill. So a lot of these guys, they tend to talk about me when I'm not there. But whenever I'm in the ring, and I say whenever I'm in the ring with them, it always goes in a direction opposite from what they said it would go.
Right. So what do you think pushed this brother to call your name, and what was the reason as to why he called your name? What was the specifics as to why he put your name in his mouth?
Well, since we talking boxing, Chief, let's keep it there for a moment. If I'm an up and coming fighter and I want to grow my name, I'm going to call out the heavyweights in the division. I'm going to call out the people who got big names, because sense. I'm going to use their fame and their notoriety as a stepping stone.
Makes sense.
So they've been trying to do that with me for the longest because he actually belongs to a very small group. And they've been trying for many years to use me as a stepping stone to bring more attention to what it is that they do. And my thing is, I don't mind that. We can do that. That's perfectly fine. I don't mind that. But if you're going to be disrespectful at the same token, where you're using my name and my notoriety to give you a name and to give you an audience, and you're being disrespectful, why should I participate in that?
Got you. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I agree with that. I mean, you can't use my name and expect it to go peaches. You know what I'm saying? You got to be prepared for whatever it is that comes at you. So let's get into the into what the conversation was about. What exactly was the discussion, the debate about, and what was it that what was the point that he was trying to convey?
His point is everybody in the Israelite community, myself included, does not understand Hebrew grammar. And this is the reason why we have such a horrible perception of what the Bible is teaching. He says that we grossly neglect the rules of language, i.e. grammar, when it comes to interpreting the text. And he said with the matter of Deuteronomy 28, it just simply is not what the Israelite community is validating it to say that it is. He admits to what is an interesting comment. He said he used to be an Israelite. And he said when he studied more in the Hebrew language, he realized that the entire doctrine is incorrect. So now what he basically does, he says he does not believe that any of the biblical characters exist, but he does follow and hold on to the moral compass of the Bible. I thought that was a very interesting statement.
That's very interesting, because you don't believe in the people that gave you the actual text or the laws, which I assume that's what he's talking about.
Yes.
The the morality of the book, but you don't believe in any of the men who actually gave out these words.
Exactly.
So that's crazy in itself. So let's get into it a little bit. Do you have the slideshow up?
I
Do you have
definitely got my PowerPoint ready.
your
Yeah.
PowerPoint? So
Yeah.
let's get into it a little bit, so our listening audience might be able to understand exactly what is it that we got into. And listen, brothers and sisters, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to continue to subscribe and like the videos and share them to your platforms, so all your different platforms, so that way we can we could get the algorithms going and get everything up. So what's interesting is that where did this brother come? Where did he come from? And who was his school of understanding again? I know you gave it to me. Right. What is his school and his teacher?
Right. So he comes from a very, very, as I said, small knit community. They call themselves Paradigm. Very interesting name. They call themselves Paradigm. And their main thing is to come into the Israelite community, to exploit it, to teach Hebrews the Hebrew language. But ultimately, what they're also teaching is they're teaching that the things that the Bible is saying is incorrect. In fact, Dwight last night was actually trying to correct the Masoretic scribes to say that they were incorrect. The people who scribed the Torah were incorrect. This is a guy that barely has 3-4 years of reading Hebrew, but now he is going to style himself as an authority to correct the Masoretic scribes. Any serious scholar of the language and the text and the culture knows that the Masoretic scribes is a very intense system, as it were, very rigorous discipline, as it were. To correct them, you had better really not just know the language, but have a firm grip on the culture and the text as well. Meaning you might want to practice this way of life too, because you can know a given language, right? Like let's say Hebrew, but that doesn't mean you're going to understand what the Hebrew Bible is teaching because you speak Hebrew.
Right.
There's people that live in Israel today who are Christian, and they read the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew, yet they still see Christianity. So knowing the language is not the end all when it comes to interpreting the text. And that's what these guys miss out on.
Right. So I guess you could get us started as to what is it exactly that that this brother was trying to convey, and what was what was it that was your rebuttal?
Okay, so his contention is that when you analyze Deuteronomy 28:68 from a grammatical perspective.
All right, to everyone out there, this is Deuteronomy 28:68 in the Hebrew, and the original text. All right.
Yes.
So don't be confused. Some of you might not understand Hebrew, but this is Deuteronomy 28, verse 68.
Absolutely. I also have some key terms highlighted in yellow that were focuses during the dialogue. Deuteronomy 28 opens up by saying, "We heshivka, we heshivka." The root shuv means to bring or to return. That's the shoresh or the root. The letter wav is what we call the wav consecutive. The last letter is a kaf sufit. It means you. And overall, this verb, which is what it is, to bring, to move, to carry, to return, that's a verb. It's in what we call the hifil stem, which is a causative stem, right? It's on the active end of the 7 major Hebrew verb stems, if I could just point that out for a second.
Okay.
That would be this verb stem here. So there are 7 major Hebrew verb stems. Active verb stems entail any action that the subject of the sentence is doing. Passive verb stems entail any action that the subject of the sentence is receiving or that someone else is doing to the subject. The one reflexive verb here, hitpa'el, that's basically telling you that the subject of the sentence is doing something to themselves. And if I was to get super technical, I would say that even the nifal verb stem can sometimes be a reflexive verb stem, meaning this verb stem right here, nifal, can sometimes behave as a reflexive stem as the hitpa'al. In this verb stem, which is the operative verb stem that we want to focus on right now, hifil, it's, as you see, it says active and causative. What this means is that the subject of the sentence is doing some type of action that is causing something to occur. And that's highly significant because now when we scroll down, we look at we hashivka, the verb is to bring or to return, but it's prefaced with what we call the hifil verb stem. So it says, and you will be caused to brought, and then you have the name of the creator. So the creator will cause you to be brought or to return. And then it simply says Mitzrayim, which we translate normally in the Bible as Egypt.
Egypt, correct.
Then you have the phrase Ba'aniot. This word we kind of got stuck on last night, and I'm not really sure why. I thought this was very open and shut in terms of how easy it is to get around. Dwight tried to argue that this word Ba'aniot is an incorrect rendition of another term, which is a term for mourning in Hebrew, which is very, very similar. In fact,
he said that he said that the text was incorrect.
He said the text is incorrect. Remember, with 3 and 4 years in the language, last night he was trying to correct the Masoretic scribes.
Not only Masoretic scribes, what about the hundreds upon thousands of people that came after the Masoretes, that read the book, that studied it, that dissected it inside out, and that never said that was incorrect?
Never said that was incorrect. Never said that.
But I digress. Go ahead, man. I'm just. Yeah,
it shows you the arrogance in the community that this is a guy who last night admitted he didn't know how to put together a PowerPoint. This is a guy who admitted last night that he doesn't know how to hook up his computer so that he can do a presentation from the laptop. But this is also the same guy that says he's going to correct the Masoretic scribes. So, there were a lot of statements that were made by him which were very empty. I'm going to reshare my screen just once more to point towards the operative term that he was attempting to say that this was. So you guys should see this in a couple seconds. And here we go. All right, boom. So we're now looking at the word, and let me blow it up. Looking at the word Anah, spelled Be'ivrit, Aleph, Nun, Hey, with a kamatz vowel pattern, which is what we call the Pa'al stem, or the simple Kal stem, as you can see here. That means to mourn. It certainly does. But what's interesting about Brown Drivers Briggs Hebrew dictionary, which is the dictionary that this is in, and it's a dictionary that he has and I also have, it not only tells you what the word means, but it tells you exactly where in the Bible the word was ever used. So it's not simply saying that this is the word for mourn. It's giving you the places in the Bible where it's used to mean mourn, and that's significant.
3:26 and 19.
So Isaiah 3:26 and 19:8 both employ Anah to mean mourn. And then Aniyah, which is obviously very similar to Aniyot or Aniyah, which also means ships. It means to mourn. And that's Isaiah 29, verse 2, and Lamentations 2 and 5. And that's it. There are 2 places in the Torah where this form, Aniyah, is used to denote mourning. Now, when you scroll down, you come across the overall term again, Anah, which this time it carries the connotation of vessel. So the lexical meaning takes on a new connotation right now, right? So now you have what's called a kataf, kamatz, and then you have the kirik, and then the nun and the yod. So this is aleph with a kataf kamatz under it, the nun with a kirik, and then the yod. That entails ships or fleet. And it's used in 1 Kings 19:26. It's also used in Isaiah 33 and 21. And then Aniyah, once again, is used to denote ship. And that's in Deuteronomy 28:68. So he pulled out this dictionary and only looked at the top half and tried to convince the people that Israelites are misinterpreting the 68th verse because it does not say ships, it says morning. This is sloppy scholarship at its best. I'm going to say it again. Sloppy scholarship at its best. I say sloppy because all he had to do was scroll down a couple of entries under to see that in Deuteronomy 28, it doesn't render as morning. It's rendered as ship.
That's a dilemma.
Yeah, that's a dilemma for him. So that's when he hits a brick in the wall. And then that's when he does something which was also interesting. So allow me to reshare my screen once more.
Absolutely.
That's when he does this. And this made for the dialogue, in my opinion, to go. This is where it began to really go left. So he says right now that Ba'aniot has a kataf kamatz, a kilrik under the noon, and then the yod, the kolam, and the tav. And he tried to say that the Masoretic scribes got the spelling incorrect. He first said Zion Lexx doesn't know how to spell the word. First of all, unlike him, I wasn't holding up a white scribble board and writing things. Right. I was showing the text from a digital copy online, Safaria. So I'm not the one that's spelling it. It's a digital copy of the Torah that's online that everybody can access, safaria.org. Right. He then goes on to say that aniot is a translation and a misinterpretation and a misspelling of the term from morning. So he's basically saying the Masoretes got this wrong because in context, this means to mourn.
And,
but you notice,
and just for a second, I called about 3 people that are very proficient in the Hebrew language.
Yes.
And I ran it by them. And I said, does the word mean ships or does it mean sorrow? They said, well, sorrow, it wouldn't be sorrow because the word sorrow, it sounds similar, but the word sorrow will begin with an iron. They all said that.
Yep.
They all said it will begin with an iron.
Yep. Well, you do have it with an aleph as well, definitely in the Torah. However, the greater point here to make is that even the dictionary that he's using to try to dissect my point is agreeing with my point.
Right.
And that was the most embarrassing thing about what he did. That was
the most important thing, right?
Right. And as I'm even going to highlight this comment. As Ashley just put in the comment section, he didn't have a single source to support any claim that he made. Absolutely. The entire night, he held up a whiteboard, began to scribble on it, and then tell us what he believes it means. Right. He did not verify through any source other than himself to agree or disagree with anything that he said. In other words, he doesn't believe a faith-based text like the Bible, but he expects us to have faith that he's telling the truth.
That he's telling the truth.
Which is interesting.
That was making me laugh during the debate too. The bomb
Which is interesting because these guys, they laugh at the Bible and the belief system, but the contradiction here is that he wanted us to believe that he was telling the truth because he simply did not provide any sources to verify anything that he said. This is why the scholarship was sloppy. Walking into it, I already knew what this was going to be because, like I said, one thing you know about me, Chief, is that I study people. Right. And so if I'm ever going to enter in a dialogue with somebody, it's never on the fly. I know exactly who you are and what you're about. I don't sleep on anyone. I always do my homework before I have a dialogue with anybody. Always do my homework. So I already knew my opponent, as it were. And one thing, when you know your opponent, you're already pre-qualified to have an edge in the dialogue because you know what your opponent basically is going to bring. So not only did I point out that his translations were incorrect, but I also pointed out that if you go to the Samaritan text of the Torah, which is regarded as a very old text as well, and according to some academic circles, the Samaritan text is even seen as being older than the Masoretic text. Right. So in terms of textual criticism, one of the things that we perform or do when we're performing textual criticism is to compare and contrast text sources. So that's why I have the Samaritan text pulled up here to see what way, if any way at all, it's differentiated from the Masoretic. So the first word is the same, Weheshivka, right? Adonai or Yehovah.
Right.
This is a new word per se because it has an additional letter. In the Masoretic text, and I'll pull that up really quick, it's simply spelled Mitzrayim, right? With ending with the mem sufit, right? The closed mem. Then in the Samaritan text, it has an additional letter, the letter He. That's because this entails direction. It's pronounced Be'ivrit Mitzrayma. There would be a kamatz underneath the letter mem, and together with the He, that means towards. So in the Samaritan text, it says, and the Lord will bring you back towards or to Egypt. And then it says, Ba Oniot. Oniot. In the Samaritan text, it says, excuse me, in the Masoretic text, it says Aniot, spelled Aleph, Nun, Yod, Kolam, Tav. But in the Samaritan text, it's spelled Oniot with the addition of the letter Wav between the Aleph and the Nun. And what was even most interesting about that, Chief, is that in his presentation, he looked at this form, he wrote it on the board, and he said, if you want to say ships, this is how you would spell it. Well, in the Samaritan text, it's there. And that point totally went over his head.
Right. Basically agreeing to the same thing. It's just
he's saying the same thing because I pulled up what's called a textual variant from what is even regarded as an even older source to show that even the older sources, because remember, he's now saying that the Masoretic tradition is incorrect. The Masoretic scribes got it wrong. So I said, okay, let me go to the Samaritan Torah. By the way, the Samaritan Torah is written in Paleo Hebrew. I have a very unique copy of it. This is written using the Assyrian or the Aramaic characters. But the spelling is still the way that is represented in the Samaritan text. So the Samaritans agree that it's not saying morning, it's saying ships. Even in their interpretation. That killed him. And it also went over his head, by the way. He didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I think what happens when a lot of these guys come into debates, they so focus on the one thing that they're focused on that they feel like they have an advantage on. And then when someone, turns it around on them and shows them like, that's not really how it, that's not really what it says, then they don't have a plan B or C or, us coming up, we always had a plan for any different scenario.
Yes.
That those guys just stay stuck on one gear. And when you start shifting gears on them, they stay behind.
They stay behind.
That's what I've realized in that debate. I was like, it was almost unfair. I think that next time, before he call you out for anything, he might need to make an appointment.
In fact, I don't think he's qualified to have that dialogue with me. I think that the teacher, the leader of their organization, should step up and take it. Not him. He's just simply not qualified.
Who is the leader of their organization?
An older fellow. I think he's like in his 80s. I seen his face one time. They call him Mats or Missy, like kind of like sound like the name Missy Elliott, Missy something Elliott. Like that,
right?
Yeah. Having said that, what's interesting about what I pulled out for him is that it was clear that he wasn't ready for the things that I was saying, and to my credit, I was not simply saying things and just writing things and telling people this is what I think about it. I was showing people the sources.
Right.
That's what we call textual criticism, and that's what we call a correct way of debating. When you're in a debate, one of the things that's imperative, as you know, is citation. You got to cite your sources. You got to cite your sources. So again, I'm sure he's only going to realize it now because they're watching. He's only going to realize it now that damn Zion's point definitely took him off his square. It went over his head last night that the reason why I went to the Samaritan text was not to show off that I have it, was to show that even an older text, older than the Masoretic text, still agrees with my point and spells the word ships in the way that you said represents ships.
Ships, right.
Killed him with his own argument by going to a much older text. I came prepared with much more, by the way. I'm still not going to show everything, as you know.
You don't show
back.
your whole hand,
right. As you know, I don't hold back. There's a lot of things that I have on deck ready for this dialogue. A lot of things that I have on deck, but some of the basic elements that I was trying to convey is, for instance, the top half of this chart are prefixes. The bottom half of this chart are suffixes. Right? The letter bait with a shawah, what we call the vocal shawah, means in or with. Right? It's a preposition. It means in or with. As a prefix, as the first letter in the Hebrew word, not being part of the root of the word, it simply means in or with. But that's only when it takes what's called a shawah. When there's either a patak or kamatz under the bait, it doesn't mean simply in or with. It now means in the or with the. And that difference or nuance is honed in on by the presence of either a patak or kamatz. So that vowel, these 8-class vowels, render the letter bait as a prefix, not simply as in or with, but now as also including what's called the definite article, the. All right? Now watch this. In the word for ships, it doesn't simply say be aniot, which would simply mean in ships or with ships. The vowel kamatz is under there, Chief. And remember what we just said. With a kamatz or patak, it means in the or with the. The definite article specifies and highlights things of great importance. Which book? The book. Which store? The store. Which guy? That's the guy. The man. When you use the definite article, it's to stress and emphasize something. In the word for ships, it's prefaced with the letter bait and the vowel kamatz. So that's to be translated as with the ships or in the ships. This point also went clearly over his head last night, and I'm going to break it down very slowly.
Okay.
We all know that the transatlantic slave trade is not the only slave trade unique to having ships for transporting slaves.
Right.
The Romans transported slaves on ships. The Assyrians did, and even the Egyptians did. Much later on in history, by this time, Egypt is a crumbling empire. This is way out in the New Kingdom period where most of the pharaohs are fizzled out. Most of the Nisus are already fizzled out, all right? But the point is, the transatlantic slave trade is not unique insofar as it's the only slave trade by way of ship. There were several slave trades by way of ship. So now the question is, how are we to know that this is a reference to the transatlantic slave trade when we know from history there were several slave trades by way of ship? And that question is answered with the presence of the kamatz underneath the bait, rendering it in the ships or with the ships, because what that's now saying is something we already also know in history. It is a fact that there was slavery by way of ships, but there's an even greater fact. No slavery by way of ship compares to the size and scale of the transatlantic slave trade. None throughout history transported that many slaves, lasted that long as the transatlantic slave trade. And this is why the Masoretes decided to put the kamatz under debate, to not simply render it as in ships or with ships, but in the ships, using the definite article to emphasize that this event by way of ship is not to be compared to any other event by way of ship. In fact, it eclipses all events by way of ship.
The bomb drop.
And that point also went over his head.
Absolutely.
Right? So, again,
because he was so caught up in his and what he was trying to show you that he could not listen to what you had to say.
Yes.
So no matter what you were saying, he just knew that he was right. He couldn't see it from any other angle or any other eyes, right? But his eyes and it was just I got a headache by watching this presentation because he has a cell phone, and with the cell phone, he was trying to show in the Tanakh, and then he was trying to write at the same time, and that's never good. That's a headache. You know what I mean? That's a headache. And the way you present it, just like this, nice and clear, even if a person didn't know Hebrew, they could see the presentation.
That's
who's actually presenting.
That's right. One thing I learned years ago, Chief, and I learned this from our teacher, may his memory be blessed, Chief of Chiefs, Chief Naftali. You know how much we love and admire and respect him as a teacher. I remember him saying once that the goal of communication is that you reach your audience. So you shouldn't speak utilizing language that goes over the head of your audience, right? You should always keep in mind the aim of communication. The aim of communication is that you're trying to connect with your audience. So like people like Brother Polite, they use every big word in the dictionary, hoping nobody understands it, leaving people feeling like, oh my God, he's so smart because nobody knows what that means. Right. Well, I guess to people who are simple, that was a skill set. But to people who are seasoned in academia, you failed. Because the goal of communication is simply that you connect with your audience. If you notice, when Dwight is speaking, he's using highly complex Hebraic terms to break down before an audience that absolutely doesn't know Hebrew. That automatically lets you know he's not a Hebrew teacher.
Right. Because he was just so focused. He was just so focused on what he thought was right.
Any teacher,
and that's what I was saying.
Any teacher knows that real teaching is when I can reach the elder, I could reach the young head, and I could reach the babe. If I could reach all three of those age ranges in my dialogue, then I've succeeded in the goal of communicating with my audience and connecting with them. The goal of communication is that you connect with your audience. Why are you using highly complex Hebraic grammar terms that no one is familiar with other than the people who actually know grammar, such as myself and some of the other people that were viewing? Remember, the goal of communication is that you connect with your audience. So if you notice, everything that I said, I was careful to delineate and define before I went into a full, interpretation. I wanted to make sure that everybody's on a certain level. I didn't want to leave anybody behind. And that's the mark of a real teacher.
Absolutely. And that clearly is what came across on the screen. I commend you. I always commend you because you always stand for Israel. I think that a lot of people they need to acknowledge that, right? Like these debates with these people, with these Egyptologists and the conscious community, these debates were we were behind the 8 ball at one point.
Yes.
Right? Because people weren't getting into language and studying language and doing things of this nature. But then you got into the meta, you started flipping some of that stuff around to the point now where they don't even want to debate with you. Facts. When it comes to all of this stuff. So I always try to tell people, our brother Chief Uzziel, he's out there fighting the battle that y'all don't see. He's out there keeping them brothers at bay from trying to tear some of these other people up. So I think we need to support him and understand his value within our community, because at one point, mid 2015, 2014, boy, them boys was going.
Yes, yes,
Them boys
yes.
was going. They had a
That was
bunch of them boys that was, I mean, they was trying to eat our food out here.
that was a full lineup. That was the Sarah Suit and Seti days. That was the Young
Yeah.
Pharaohs. That
Yeah.
was
Uncle
your
Kent.
Ankh.
Yeah. You had the full lineup out there. And for whatever people think, you had a couple of people here and there that they think, but you came in and I mean, you was the one dropping napalm. They was shooting, they was shooting their they army issued rifles. Yeah, everybody get that in the war. You know what I mean? You get your you get your 4.5 and you get your M16, you take little
That's
shots.
You remember the movie Harlem Nights? Last night with Dwight reminded me of the movie Harlem Nights. Remember in the shooting scene,
Right.
you got Arsenio Hall and a couple of the people that's with him. They busting shots from full assault rifles, and then they got a guy with them that got a 6-shooter. Pop,
yeah.
pop, pop. So last night I had the AR-15 ready, but Dwight kept coming with the pop, pop, pop.
I try to always tell people that my brother's out here doing the good work, and and like I said earlier, Sarnetta TV, Sarnetta Studios, Sarnetta University, all those platforms were built on. Yes, they were built on debates and bringing out the knowledge, but they were also built on performance and entertainment. If you've been around long enough and you've seen that platform, you know what it's about. A debate wasn't just a debate. It was flexing.
That's
what
right.
we call flexing, right?
That's right.
Almost like what rappers do when they start talking, they jump.
That's right.
That's what, because we come from a different point of view. We have a different type of spirit.
That's right.
Right? So when people see your bravado, I'm like, nah, that's what they do in that platform. You know what I mean? Like, so what? He turned up. So it wasn't your turn up wasn't a disrespectful turn up. You was just like expressing like, I dare you come and call me out and you're not even on point. You know what I'm saying? Yep. That's just like dropping bars, It's just like dropping bars. So it's crazy how people as a whole, I don't, where did he appear? Like, why did Sarnetta even give this brother a platform?
Well, you know what it is. That? You know what it is. Their community, the conscious community, the Sarnetta TV platform, they don't understand Hebrew language. And, obviously this is not a shot. This is just the truth. Like, Sarnetta doesn't speak Hebrew, nor does he pretend to be, right? And many other people that are on their platform don't speak Hebrew, nor do they pretend to. So for when you don't know or don't possess a skill set, and then here comes someone that at the least bit appears proficient in whatever given skill set, then you're going to yield to them and you're going to believe that, okay, this person really knows their thing, especially if that's coupled with passion. Because remember, Chief, like, you came in this way of life earlier than me. I only came in 94. I believe I met you in 95 when Shema opened that summer, right? That's when we met. And as you know, in 96, we teaching in the temple, the young men, you teaching even before that. You teaching even before me. But my starlight per se, or my first moment in the spotlight was at Shema Israel in 1996. Every first Sabbath of the month with the SOG, the young men.
Right.
And that's when I began to, get in the groove of understanding what it is to teach. At times when I came down, you would offer criticism. Young Chief Naphtali would offer criticism. Everybody would offer criticism. And then together that edified me. So I'm saying that to say what a lot of these people are unaware of, specifically when it comes to us and our community, we've been doing this for quite some time now, and we are very seasoned.
Right. Absolutely. It's part of it. It's part of our being raised up and doing this. So the next question is, no, I know. Remember a long time ago there was you were gonna have a debate with Jabari.
Yes.
And there was someone, and I remember because I was there, Jabari, think I was there that day when Jabari expressed to you, say, you know, there's Zion, there's people. This was in the background. So, you know, Zion, there's some people that send me some stuff and try to some stuff in Hebrew and try to say, remember that? I got that. I still have that video somewhere. I have it. I'm gonna so is this that same group?
So as Chief Uzziel is bringing out to the public right now, this same group Paradigm, when I was debating Brother Jabari, they were emailing him, they were texting him, and they were saying, we could give you information to take down Zion Lexx.
And Jabari refused it. I have to commend Jabari.
And one thing I gotta say, hindsight is 2020. As much as, you know, me and Jabari may beat up on each other, the reality is Jabari stood on what he says he's about, Ma'at. Because Jabari reached out and said, you know, Zion, these brothers reached out. They had information that they said they wanted to use against you that they could arm me with, but I digressed and I said that I wouldn't do it. And I had to take a step back and say, you know what's most interesting about this? You have Israelites in the Israelite community, such as a Captain Tazariak, and many others like them that will sneakily diss me, publicly diss me, but on the Kemetic side, you got people who are coming to them and arming them to take me down, and they say, nah, it's not that serious. So I'm out fighting and defending the Bible, and I got Israelites putting knives in my back. This is interesting.
Well, you know, that's always the conditions of the battle. That's how it is. I mean, if you read the history of the Maccabees, you had some Israelites in there that was making Israelites, you know, not circumcise their children and you know, trying to buy the priesthood and all types of stuff that was going on and wretchedness. So don't even worry yourself about that. I told you a long time ago, stay focused on what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Don't try to look for friendship from some of these. The people who are cool with you, they're going to show themselves from the beginning. Even if you bump heads with them and you clash with them, like, you're going to know who are the people who are your friends. Now, if you continue to think that someone is your friend and every time you turn around, they got the knife up, and then because you look back, they put it down, you got to know that at some point you're going to slip and that knife is going to end up in your spine.
Yep.
You know? So you have to just understand who are those people and keep them at bay, and you know, you could say shalom, but understand, you know, understanding is the greater part of it all. Let's say get you knowledge, get you wisdom, and above all, you're getting get what? Understanding.
For many years, shout out to my brother Moray William Brown, that's also in the comment section. He's the leader and head pastor of Boom Church in Atlanta. Which is an Israelite-based organization. Hallelujah. Shout out to you, my brother. Having said that, you know, for many years you would tell me, you know, Chief, I see that there's a couple of people in the Israelite community that, you know, you have a lot of respect for, and, you know, you openly say a lot of things about a lot of different people, mostly positive. And you told me, you said, you should be mindful about that because everybody may not feel that way in terms of reciprocating that energy with you. And that's something that I obviously had to learn over the years the hard way. I had to learn the hard way that there are a lot of people in the community that I smile with and that smile with me, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of funny business going on. You know what I'm saying? And for many years, you know, things would come my way and people would tell me, but I've always tried to look past it, because one thing that I try to live on is believe who a person says they are until they show you otherwise. I'm going to say it again. Believe what a person says they are until they show you otherwise. So I come from that old school thought that says, if you saying this is what you about, I'm going to believe you. Until you show me otherwise.
Right.
And with some of these people, they've shown me otherwise. Namely, for instance, you know, Captain Tazariak was going hard in the comment section yesterday, dissing me. Mind you, I'm defending the Bible, right? I'm defending the view that we all hold, but he's in the comment section dissing me. What's most unique about that, Chief, is I got a text message from him that's literally a month old. He reached out to me a month ago to ask me to help him with his debate in Jabari. You know the debate that he lost?
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that I know you told me that earlier, but I didn't even know that they had a debate, like an actual debate.
Yeah, this the same guy that Tazariak has recent videos on his YouTube page. When I say recent, I mean in the last 5 months. Videos titled Tazariak Chase Zion Lexx, with the information, or ran down on Zion, like basically titles that he demolished me on the African topic. But then what people don't know is he calls me behind the scenes and asks me for information. So I don't understand this kind of energy, Chief. I'm not used to it. Right. I'm used to, if you say you stand up, then stand up. Be that. Don't tell me you are my brother in private, but in public, you a whole enemy. I never understood that kind of energy, Chief, because as you know, I'm not that way. I don't do that to people.
Right. Well, like I told you before, you have a job, you have an actual God-given duty. And you don't have to worry about everybody else, because a lot of them, a lot of that stuff comes from, and this is just a general statement. It's not aimed at anyone, but a lot of people sometimes get jealous of what you are and who you are and what you know. A lot of people are afraid of what you don't. And the only way that they could find to make you or to put you down is by bad. He don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
He talking something crazy. That's not Israelite doctrine, and this is what people do. This is human nature, because really in some people's hearts and minds is the jealousy or an envy that they have for the things that So God blessed you with that mind. He didn't bless everybody else with it. You know what I mean? So you look at your blessing and you continue to keep trucking and keep moving forward, so that way you don't have nobody blocking your blessings, because all that, the peripheral stuff is the stuff that will distract you. That's why they put blinders on horses, because if he saw the horse next to him, he'll be turning his head and he'll be,
right.
You know what I mean? So you got to have that tunnel vision and know what's your goal and where you're supposed to go to, and stay on that, man, because everything else is just white noise. You know what I mean?
That's a fact.
Or everything else is just white noise, and it's just going to distract you, and you don't need that right now. You're on a good trajectory. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
You got, you have your and for all those in my channel, if you want to go to, if you want to have a nice starting your Hebrew and understanding Hebrew, please go to my brother Zion Lexx. If he could just give his email address for those who are looking for a Hebrew beginner's course and intermediate course, and I know he got quite a few courses going on, but go see my brother Zion Lexx. He's going to do a real great job with you. And,
man,
putting you on with this Hebrew. So whenever you can, just put that email information up there. They'll be able to see it just like they see it on your channel. Just put up your email information so that people will be able to see it, and that way they could subscribe and do everything that they. So right there, right underneath there, it's scrolling along. See my brother Zion Lexx scrolling along his stuff for you to be able to contact him. So yeah, don't stress yourself out with these people. You got your whole future ahead of you. You don't have to. I'm telling you straight up, there is nothing that you gain from that. And I understand the whole brotherhood thing, and we're supposed to be brothers. But when people constantly show you that they're not, then what do you expect? Everybody's not going to like you.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? And that's life in Israel and no Israel. Don't expect everybody to like you, and don't expect everybody to give you a hug and to say, Zion, we love you, because it's just not like that. And I get that in life. That's how life is, right? And it's no disrespect to them, but that's just how life is, and you just move on, bro.
That is a fact, man. That is a fact. But you know what I'd like to do, Chief? I'd like to give the family that's tuning in a nice treat. I'd like to break down Deuteronomy 28:68
Let's do
and
it.
just give that interpretation for the family.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right. So
and we can end it with this so we don't make this too drawn out.
excellent.
And that people would come back and look at the video. Let's go.
Right. That's right. So again, the first word is we hashivka, which is the verb shuv or shiv, which is in the field stem, right? The root is shuv, which means to return, to bring.
Right.
The last letter is the letter kaf sufif with a kamatz under it, and that is a suffix that means you. The first letter is a wav, what we call a wav consecutive. It's conjunctive. It joins statements. It means and, or is translated as and. So this is translated as and you will be brought, or and you will return. And then you have the name of the creator, right? So and Yehovah will cause you to be brought to, the Lord will cause you to be brought Mitzrayim. And I'm gonna stop there for a moment, because when you look at this, shout out to my brother Hans Buckle, who recently moved from Philly, and he now lives and resides in Belize. We was on the phone for almost 3 hours last night. Shout out to you, brother, tuning in all the way in Belize. Belize is an hour behind us, so right now it's 8:49 p.m. over there. Shout out to you, brother, holding down the Israelite community all the way in Belize. What's interesting about this phrase, Chief, is that since we do know Hebrew, and I even have the prefix chart up, remember, when you want to say 2 or 4, that's the Hebrew letter lamed, right? You can even use aleph and lamed with a segol, the vowel segol underneath the aleph, and then the letter lamed, and that also means 2, right? So there's a couple of ways to represent 2, right? T-O in biblical Hebrew. You could use the letter lamed, or you could use aleph and lamed with the vowel segol underneath the aleph, which is L, right? Not to be confused with the term for God, which is ale, as in ginger ale, because the vowel underneath the aleph in the singular form for God is the vowel zere, which is an A sound, right? So that's ale. We usually in the Israelite community, we say L, but we do that because of the theophoric names in the Torah, like Yisrael, and that truly is pronounced as L, with as in E-H-L, L, or L. But when it comes to the singular form of the created name, that's Ale. All right, that's neither here nor there. In the letter, using the letter Lamed as 2 or 4, or either an L, watch what's interesting about Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, and the Lord will cause you to return, and then you simply have Mitzrayim. Notice something, Chief. If this is telling us that we are going to Egypt, as in Egypt, the land of the pharaohs,
right,
you would expect to see a lamed here, to Egypt.
To Egypt, right.
Or you'd expect to see an L. But the way the Hebrew grammar works, you would definitely look to see a lamed here. It should say Le Mitzrayim. If you notice, Chief, it doesn't say Le Mitzrayim. It simply says Mitzrayim. What's interesting about that is that's the only way you're going to get to Egypt. So now let's translate it accurately and listen to how it's translated. And the Lord will cause you to return, or will cause bondage to be returned to you. Because remember, throughout the Hebrew Bible, the term Mitzrayim is synonymous with bondage. This is why when you go throughout Deuteronomy 28, most of the language used is figurative, as we all know. A nation whose language you shall not understand, which shall swoop down like an eagle's wing, or like an eagle. That's not literal. That's figurative.
Right.
It says that the heavens above shall be iron in the early passages of Deuteronomy 28, in the early verses, right? And letting us know that we won't receive our rains. Obviously, it's not telling us that the sky is going to be iron. It's figurative. So most of the way that the blessings and the curses are described in the Bible is figurative in nature. That should definitely be pointed out. So notice this. It's not saying to Egypt because you don't have a lamed. It says, and the Lord will cause you to return, or will cause to return to you bondage. So Mitzrayim is not to be taken literally here. It's figurative and it represents bondage. In other words, the text is telling us that the Creator will return us to servitude and slavery in the same way that we experienced it in Egypt of old. Hence why it uses the term Egypt or Mitzrayim. Now watch this. Let's go to a textual variant, which is the Samaritan text. I didn't get a chance to do this last night because he was all over the place. Sonnet is timing it, so I didn't have a chance to be focused and go in the way I'd like to go in and present.
Right.
So here's what I will point out. In the Samaritan text, however, it is directional. The Samaritan text is seemingly pointing towards the land of Egypt of the pharaohs. Right. But what's problematic about that? This is the Samaritan text. The Samaritans are the wicked of the land. Remember, the king of Assyria, when the Assyrian captivity occurs, he exiles the 10 tribes and then puts in place people from nearby Assyrian villages and city-states. And remember, the Bible says, the Torah says, that they did not want to keep the laws of the land. Therefore, the Creator caused the beasts of the land, the lions, to come after them so that they were compelled to follow the laws of the land. But this was due to fear. It was not in their heart to keep the Torah. So that's significant. The Samaritans all throughout the Bible get a bad rap. They did not hold on to the tradition of our fathers. Yes, to this day, you have a segment of a people called the Samaritans that observe the Bible to a certain extent within their cultural paradigm and tradition, but that's born out of fear. The Creator forced them to do so. So they was not doing it because it was in their heart. It was inspired by fear. And what's interesting then about that is they were never connected to our tradition because Samaritans are not Israelites. Remember, while we might not all agree, right? I know that this community is a very large community, the Israelite community. You have people that read the New Testament. You have people that don't read the New Testament. However, there are some key things that are mentioned there that's going to be significant in this moment. There's a person in the New Testament that is introduced as the Good Samaritan. Question: why is he called the Good Samaritans? If Samaritans keep Torah like everybody else and they hold on to the tradition of our fathers, there's no need to single one of them out and say that he's good because they're all good, right? They follow the Torah. But on the other token, the reason why this person is represented in the New Testament, and I want my Messianic brothers and sisters to jump in the chat room and agree or disagree, the reason why this person is styled as the Good Samaritan is because Samaritans overall had a very bad reputation post-temple, post-Second Temple, to the extent that if you find a good one, you're going to call him the Good Samaritan.
Right.
So that's significant to note now because it's only in the Samaritan text that it points towards the land of Egypt, which means that this is their belief. But remember, they're not Israelites. So they don't have the final authority and the final say-so. And this is why we hold to the truth that the Masoretic tradition is authoritative, because there are several textual variants in the Samaritan text that will disagree with key areas of biblical teaching, such as this one. And this is why we hold the Masoretic text to be authoritative, because the Masoretic text is true to what we are teaching about Torah.
Right.
So that's why that's significant. So moving on now to the word ba'aniot, the sentence should be translated as, and the Lord will cause bondage or slavery to be returned to you. And again, it uses the term Egypt or Mitzrayim because it will be the same type of slavery experience there. And it doesn't say simply in ships or with ships. Remember, ba'aniot means in the ships or with the ships, emphasizing the size and scale of this event. So we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, which was the greatest slave trade by way of ship. Then you have Baderek Asher Amarti Leka, by the way of which I said to you, Lo Tosif Od Lir Ota, you shall not see it again. Then it says, Wehit Makartem, Wehit Makartem. tem. Now, the brother Dwight said that Israelites don't know how to translate Hebrew because this does not mean, nor is it to be translated as the King James does, you shall offer yourselves as male and female slaves, but no man shall buy you. I agree. The King James translation is incorrect. But even more important than that, Chief, the guy who's telling us that, Brother Dwight, he just found that out 4 years ago. As you know, we've been knowing this for 2 decades. Me, 3 years shy of 3 decades, and you already 30 years in. And our teachers 40 and 50 years in. We've been teaching that the King James Version is incorrect. We've been teaching that Lashawan Kodash is not biblical Hebrew.
Right. Absolutely.
So why are they acting like this guy came on the scene and reinvented the wheel and did something that the people who have tenure have been doing? Right. So again, hit makartem, and let me pull up the verb stem for a moment. Okay. Looking at the hit pa'el verb stem, as I said earlier, you have what's called the reflexive stem, which is the hit pa'el, which means the subject of the sentence is doing something to their self. All of the verb stems are basically codified by what we call their vocal pattern, as well as the appearance of certain letters, like the hey followed by the kirik in the hefil, the hey and tav, which gives you heat in hit pa'el, the hey in hufal, and then the vocal pattern in pa'al, which is a'a, the vocal pattern in pl, and then the nif'al is normally prefaced with the letter nun and the vowel kirik, right? But again, we know verb stems by vocal patterns, the sound, as well as the appearance of various letters. Having said that, now watch this. In the word hit makartem, it's obviously in the hit pa'el verb stem, which, as we just explained, means anything that the subject of the sentence is doing or causing to themselves. The subject is causing something to happen to themselves. The verb here is makar, and it's in the kal stem, otherwise known as the pa'al stem, right? The kal stem is what we call a simple active verb stem. The subject of the sentence, it's active, so the subject of the sentence is doing something, and the action is simple. The verb makar is to sell. Then you have tem, which is you in the plural. So hit makartem is to be translated as, and you shall sell yourselves. And you shall sell yourselves. And there, sham, le oveka, le avdika, we lish pachot, we en kone, as male and female servants to your enemies, and there shall be we en kone, and no buyer or redeemer. Redeemer, because remember, when we buy something, the synonym is to redeem. You've redeemed something. So remember, Deuteronomy 28 is is written in what we call figurative prose or simple prose, right? We know that there's Hebraic prose all throughout the Bible, right? We know about the song Ha'azinu in Devarim, Deuteronomy 32. That's deeply figurative, right? Deuteronomy 28, as we know, is, when we study it in context, is written very figurative. So we'en kone is translated as, and there shall be no buyer, but it means, and there shall be no one to redeem you. But I'm going to validate those statements, because unlike my counterpart, I'm not simply going to tell people this is my opinion. I'm going to validate it with sources. So here we go. So to first stress the notion that makar means to sell, and it's figurative, I want everybody to look at the screen. Here's the verb makar, Strong's number 4376. It's a primitive root. To sell, literally as merchandise, a daughter in marriage, or into slavery, or figuratively at all, sell away or self. Notice, Chief, that the term figuratively is used when describing that you shall sell yourself.
Right.
And that's the point to hone in on.
Right.
Deuteronomy 28:68 says, and you shall sell yourselves. that was never to be interpreted literally. As you can see here, it's figurative when it's referenced to yourself. You see that?
Absolutely.
All right, now watch the further proof. In 1 Kings 21 and 20, it says with regard to the king Ahab, I have found you because you have sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. Now, Ahab did not physically sell himself to do evil. I mean, what is that? You sold yourself to do evil? It's figurative. The sentence is trying to teach and stress that Ahab is the cause of his own demise. Hence why it said, you sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. Hence why later on in the New Testament, it comes and says, the wages of sin are death. The reason why that statement is made in the New Testament, that the wages of sin are death, is because of an older Old Testament tradition, which teaches that when a person is deep in sin, whatever judgment that they get from the Creator, they earned it. They work for it because they sold themselves to do that which is evil. But that term is figurative in nature. It's never literal. Just like here, Ahab didn't literally sell himself. Another text is 1 Kings 21:25, which reads, but there was no one like Ahab who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord. Again, the term hit makar is used in a figurative sense to emphasize that Ahab is the cause of his own demise because he did not sell himself to do anything physically. It's figurative language. In fact, Chief,
it's like we say sellout. Well, we say you a sellout, man.
Right. It's figurative. You a sellout. So every reference in the Torah, Chief, where the verb hit makar is used, and this is what these guys don't talk about, every appearance of the term hit makar, it's all figurative. So the last reference is 2 Kings 17:17, and it's referring to the entire nation. And it says here, and they sold themselves, talking about all of the Israelites, to do evil in the sight of the Lord and to provoke him to anger. Look at the term. Wayit makaru. Makaru. The wav at the end denoting they, the plural. Makar, to sell. Wayit, the hit pa'el verb stem. It's figurative. So everywhere in the Hebrew Bible where the word hit makar is used, it's always used figuratively and never literally. And that's something that escapes these guys because remember, Chief, they don't study the Bible to live by it. They study the Bible to teach it to other people, right? In their community that they, because they also teach for a fee. And there's no problem with that. That's okay. But they study it to teach because they make money on it, but they don't live by it. On top of that, they also critique it and they say that the biblical writers have it wrong. And not the translations, not the English. They're not stopping there. They're saying even the original Hebrew is wrong.
Oh, wow.
This is why these guys don't deserve any kind of merit or mention because they're all over the place with what it is that they're doing. So again, the term hit makartem, whenever it is used all over the Bible, no matter what form it is, so long as it's in the hit pa'el verb stem, it's always used figuratively. Every last place, Chief. So that means this entire verse is figurative. And the Lord will cause you to be returned bondage, or the Lord will cause bondage to be returned to you. What bondage? The bondage you experienced in Egypt. And how do we know this? Let me share my screen, unshare my screen, and then share it one more time. I'm going to open up Deuteronomy 28:68 independently to prove this point that I'm about to make. Watch this. And I'm going to close out because I know it's getting late. This is going to be the last point that I make.
Nah, it's
to
cool.
prove,
take your time.
Okay. To prove that we're not talking about Egypt of old, watch this. Your sons and your daughters shall be delivered to another people while you look on. Your eyes shall strain for them constantly, but you shall be helpless. Right? Watch this.
Right.
This is the operative term and phrase and verse. Verse 36 of Deuteronomy 28 unequivocally lets us know this is not talking about ancient Egypt of old. And this is why knowing biblical Hebrew is a plus when it comes to interpreting the Bible. It's a huge plus, but it's not the end all. You have to also read and study into the culture and analyze things within context.
Right.
Just because a person knows or understands biblical Hebrew doesn't mean they're going to perfectly understand what the Bible is teaching. Because again, to use that as an example, you go into the state of Israel today and you have Christians that live there. And
Absolutely.
They're reading the Bible not in English, they're reading it in Hebrew, yet they're still teaching Christianity.
Right.
So if knowing Hebrew automatically dispels all myths, then you wouldn't have Christianity practiced in Israel today. So watch this. In verse 36, it says, the Lord will drive you, the king you set over you, to a nation unknown to you or your fathers, where you shall serve gods of wood and stone.
Wood and stone.
Our forefathers been to Egypt.
Yep.
We were enslaved there. Our forefathers served the gods of Egypt because we were enslaved there. They said that this is a reference in Deuteronomy 28:68 to Egypt of old, and they even argue that there are some references in this passage to Babylon. Well, our ancestors been to Babylon. They've been to Assyria. This verse says, to a nation unknown to you or your forefathers, who your forefathers have no experience with, who they have no knowledge of. So this is clearly not talking about Egypt of old, because the Bible is clear that our ancestors have knowledge of them. So this is where, again, Chief, understanding a little bit of what we call common sense comes into play. Right? And this can't simply be resolved because we know Hebrew. You have to also understand things within the context, or statement within the context of which it is presented. So again, this is basically saying, and I'll retranslate it now in perfect accordance with what it's saying, and the Lord will cause bondage to be returned to you. It uses the term Mitzrayim because the type of bondage we will experience is like the bondage of Egypt. Then it says ba'aniot, not simply in ships, but in the ships, highlighting and emphasizing the size and scale of this event and how it cannot be compared to any slave trade by way of ship. Baderek ashir amarti leka lotis of od lirota. By the way of which I said to you, you shall not see it again. When we left Egypt, the Creator told us that the Egyptians whom we see today and the slavery that we experience, we will never see it again. That's why the verse says, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again. Meaning, remember, it's figurative. So the entire passage can't be figurative, but then this one phrase is literal. So again, even when it says, by the way of which I said you shall not see it again, that as well is figurative, and is basically telling us that the Creator promised that we would not experience the type of servitude that occurred in Egypt. But remember, all of the promises of the Creator in the Bible are always conditional, because the moment that we break our end of the garment of the promise or the contract, the Creator can revert and give us according to the fruit of our ways and our doings.
Right.
All right. Then it says, "Wehit makartem," and you shall sell yourself. Now, in a very silly way, they say, well, this right here kills the Israelites because the transatlantic slave trade, Africans were bought and sold, and the Hebrew says you will sell yourself. Case closed. No, the case is not closed, because if you read everywhere that the term makar or hit makar is used throughout the Bible, it's always used figuratively to hone in on and emphasize that the person in question is responsible for the demise or the destruction that's coming to them. So the language is meant to be taken figurative, hence why you see it right here, clear as day, figuratively. With that being said, Chief, I'm done for now.
Hallelujah. Thank you once again, my brother. I appreciate the time that you put forth to come on my channel, and we're having a dual simulcast right now. We're having the simulcast, so it's on Zion Lexx's Zion Lexx channel, Chief Avdiel Ben Levi, and it's also on the Uzziel Lewi channel. I appreciate this. I know we always said we got to catch up, but we got to catch up. We got to do a sit-down interview one of these days again and cover a lot of bases as to the things that are happening. So once again, audience, as you can hear it in my voice, I'm a little bit tired. I got to get up at 4 a.m. So I thank you all for tuning in, praying that the creator of heaven and earth, Yehovah Baoth, be with you all. May the Most High God bless you once again, Zion. Chief Avdiel, thank you for the opportunity for coming on. And I pray that the creator continue to bless each and every one of us. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Still haven't tried the Locklicious all-natural hair care product line? Well, let's hear what the Lock community has to say about it.
I love how it sprays and how it feels, you guys. Like, it feels so good. And it smells amazing, you guys.
The Lock and Twist moisturizer was really good for me. The hydration mist was phenomenal. This is bomb, baby.
I was really impressed, kind of blown away, and I think that if you're struggling, definitely go check them out.
And check out the 5-star reviews on our website. So, what are you waiting for? Go to locklicious.com to start treating your crown like royalty.
I wash my natural hair and my face with the same product because natural hair care is easy. Natural skin care is easy. Don't make it hard.
All right, family. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Just as a reminder, if you guys would like to support the platform, support what I'm doing, you can send me a PayPal at zionlex@gmail.com. You can also donate via Cash App, $ZionLex. Also, do remember, family, I have Hebrew classes, Aramaic classes, and Middle Netra classes that I do all week. You can email me at zionlex@gmail.com. You have an opportunity, guys, to really get into this language and learn it and be able to rest in it, comfortable that you understand what the Bible is saying. No one can come and teach you otherwise, and also comfortable in your ability to defend it. So do remember, that's zionlex@gmail.com if you guys would like to join the Hebrew class. We are still accepting registration, but registration will close very, very soon. This is going to be the last week that we're accepting registration. The next class ain't going to be till summer. So if you want to join the Hebrew class, make sure you get in ASAP. With that being said, family, thank you for supporting this live tonight. Shout out to my brother, Chief Uzziel. I call that my big brother. We've known each other almost 30 years straight in the Israelite community, and I have tremendous respect for that brother. Thank you very much, family, and hope to see you guys again very soon. Peace and shalom.